Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another Restoration, and it's Monday morning, 6:30 here in the morning, and August 29th. And I hope y'all had a good weekend, and my weekend was horrible. Caught a bad cold, and just getting over it. Trying to get over this cold. I didn't realize I was getting sick. I thought I had a sort of a sinus infection, but it turned into like a cold. And so it was a miserable weekend, but other than that, things are going good. It's Monday morning. I'm glad to be here. And this is just a show to sort of do a morning reflection for myself as a survivor of abuse, to make sure I'm doing the work, make sure that I'm continuing on in a sort of a steady fashion on my healing journey, looking at helpful information and just making sure I'm doing the things that I need to do. So it's really really holds me accountable really to do this stuff, and which I tend to put off when I'm busy, and I just put off for a period of time, and then have to go back and readdress things and relook at things and see how I'm doing, how I'm coping, right? So that's what this is, and I hope that it's helping somebody else out there too, and it's helpful for you. If you're a survivor of abuse, make sure you'll do a safety checklist this morning. Make sure you're safe enough to even be listening to my shows. You want to make sure if you're a survivor of abuse that this type of information is not going to trigger you and send you backward in your healing journey. You really don't want that. I don't want that. You have to make sure you're safe enough to listen to anything like this, so that it might cause you to think about your own abuse and then make you go backward in your healing journey. If you're not sure how to do that, ASCA's Morris Center program, they have a Survivor to Thriver workbook, and you can go and get that for free. You can download it. You can read it, I think, right on their site if you don't want to download it. But it's a free Survivor to Thriver manual. It's actual workbook for people, and the first chapter is called Safety First, and it's about 60 pages long. I remember reading through it, and it's very helpful information. So if you're not sure how to check to see if you're safe enough to listen to anything like this, then you might want to just check that out, because it's really important. And so we'll get right into this. We're looking first. I like to look at this thing from Havoca. That's Help for Adult Victims of Child Abuse, Havoca.org, and that's it's a great website. I didn't realize there was so much information on there, really. I had looked at that website several times, many times, over the years, since 2009, mainly 2010, and there is some really good info there. And we're looking at this interesting thing that they have on their site called From Victim to Survivor to Thriver. It's just like a gauge to see where, it's kind of helpful to look at to see where I'm at in my healing journey, and whether I'm more towards the victim, more towards the survivor, or more towards the thriver, right? So this morning's is the victim lives in the past. They said here the survivor is aware of patterns, and the thriver lives in the now. And so the victim lives in the past. I guess that's always, always dealing with the past, thinking about the past, suffering from the past, really, I guess. And the survivor is aware of patterns and starts, really basically, I guess that means they're starting to look at what their behavior is and how they're dealing with things and looking at the patterns. And then the thriver lives in the now. So the victim, the extreme of that is the victim's living in the past, and the thriver is living in the now, and the survivor is somewhere in between. I'm definitely heading towards thriver on that. I'm definitely doing better on that than I ever have, really, is to live in the now instead of living in the past. And that's probably just because I've addressed so much of my life, that I didn't want to have to deal with since I've been on my healing journey, which was causing me to live in the past, really, and to live in that woundedness, right? And so, I was there living in the past and really living in that state of woundedness, really. And I'm still, I guess, between the survivor and the thriver, I'm still looking back and still looking at things. Obviously, I'm doing this show. And but I'm definitely much more aware of what's going on in my life. I'm trying to pay attention to patterns and old ways of dealing with things and old ways of feeling, looking at, day-to-day coping, how am I doing, sort of thing, aware of patterns. So I'm moving towards the thriver, which is living in the now. I do spend a whole lot more time in it now than I used to. That's for sure, and a much more healthier place as far as my feelings on life and myself, and you know, and even my past. I'm able to look at it in a much more healthy manner than I used to, and so it's good to be on this side. But I know what it's like to be on the other side there, living in the past and just being so wounded. And so these things are important to look at, I think, to sort of gauge where we're at. I really like that from Havoka. And Havoka, they also have this. This is sort of taking a look at, how am I doing on my healing journey? Any particular things I need to work on? How am I feeling right this morning? Well, I'm doing good, but I caught this cold, had a miserable weekend, and my husband is really sick right now too. So I'm sick, he's sick, and but otherwise things are going good. Really, in my personal life, I've had some setbacks. I've decided to leave some projects that I was really co-founded and working with these awesome people who I love dearly, and I decided to leave because I can't keep up with it. It's just too much, and I just can't deal with it right now. I can't keep up with it, so I work 40 hours a week, and I just have no time. I don't have time to do laundry. It's 6:30 here in the morning, so after I do this show, I can go do laundry. It leaves very little time for me because I work 40 hours a week, and so I couldn't keep up with it, so I had to leave the Advocates United for Humanity as well as Northern Books behind. But I don't want to leave the people that I was involved with behind. I love them dearly, and I just feel like I just couldn't deal with it right now. It's unfortunate, but that's something I had to do for myself, really, and that's something that I had to make that decision, and I just felt that it was for the best. So sometimes these things happen, but otherwise, how am I doing on my healing journey? Pretty good, I think. Making some progress. I joined a survivor group and recently, and that's helping in dealing with child sexual abuse. That's very helpful for me because I don't have anybody I can really talk to about the child sexual abuse and share and just get out what I need to get out about it. So it's a sharing group, and it's very helpful for me to be a part of that. So that's one thing I've done in a positive move. How am I feeling about things? Pretty good, other than the fact that I got sick, and I wasn't feeling all that well last week anyway. And then on the weekend, it just kind of came to a head on Friday afternoon, Friday night. Started feeling really sick. Woke up Saturday really sick, and so I'm just kind of recovering. Other than that, on my healing journey, I'm feeling pretty good. So we're looking at Havoka's Inner Child Healing, and you can go back if you want to pick up that last one from Friday, where we were looking at this section here, for the inner child healing, where it really says how to begin, right? And we're going to continue on with that. I just want to look at this. I want to see what they have to say about it, because I did a lot of inner child work, and I still do. And but it's mainly from Your Envisioned Mind by Beverly Searle out of Australia, as well as that's a program. It's an actual program you can do. Your Envisioned Mind, as well as John Bradshaw, and even Robert Burney has a lot to say about the inner child work. And so I want to see what these guys have to say about it. And this is Havoka.org. They say it's vitally important to start observing ourselves, our reactions, our feelings, our thoughts from a detached witness place that is not shaming. So this is when we're looking, like it says, we need to become aware to raise our consciousness, to create a new level of consciousness for ourselves that allows us to observe ourselves. That's when we're going to go and look in at the past. And like I said, on Friday, I went through, kind of really talked a lot about it, the fact that when we're going to do this work, this inner child healing work, I am safe enough to do this work without having help. But not everybody is. We have to be really careful when we're doing these things. So you have to make sure that you're really in a safe enough place to do the work on your own. They actually suggest that, especially on they all say it on their websites. We all need to be careful what we're doing when we're working on this stuff, and know what's going to trigger us and what's going to cause us to have, that might cause us to go backward in our healing journey. So before I started any of this inner child healing work, I knew that I was safe enough to do it without hurting myself or hurting somebody else. So you have to be sure of that yourself, right? You have to know where, what you can handle, what you can't handle, what's going to cause you to kind of have problems, so you want to be careful when you're doing this stuff. But they're saying it's vitally important to start observing ourselves, our reactions, our feelings, our thoughts from a detached witness place that's not shaming. I guess the detached witness really would be like a third party. That's what I started doing way back in 2009, really, when I started my blog. I started writing this blog, and I really wanted to. I was writing from myself, really, from my own eyes. When I was about 13, that's about what age I was when I was writing this blog, because I wanted to start it from that point. But I was actually looking at it as a third party because I wanted to share with the world what had happened to my parents, what caused them to do what they did, what I knew of the situation, and that sort of thing, and then how the family spiraled downward into this destructive, this destruction, really. And so, I had to look at it really from a third party instead of my own, just looking at it in my own woundedness, my own victim mentality. And that's how I started this whole thing. But it's hard to do, so that's why I'm saying you have to be very careful when you're doing stuff like that. It says we all have an inner critic, a critical parent voice that beats us up with shame, judgment, and fear. And the critical parent voice developed to try to control our emotions and our behaviors because we got the message there was something wrong with us and that our survival would be threatened if we did, said, or felt the wrong things. So this is what they're saying. We all have an inner a critical parent voice that beats us up with shame, judgment, and fear. The critical parent voice developed to try to control our emotions and our behaviors because we got the message there was something wrong with us. So it's kind of interesting to think about that, the inner critical. Lots of people call it the inner critical parent, or we sometimes could call it the inner abuser. It's the inner critical person that beats us up with either shame, judgment, or fear, right? And it says it's vital to start learning how to not give power to that critical, shaming voice. And we need to start observing ourselves with compassion. This is, I think, I'm much more farther along, like heading to what they're talking about here, than I am in the victim mode anymore. Because I used to be in that victim mode, really, of, this horrible place of a critical parent voice just continually running myself down. I wouldn't necessarily do it in front of people, but when I got home, that's when it all would start. And I really would try to be positive when I was out around people, and then I'd get home and I'd just be like, oh, what's the use, And it was horrific, and I used to be there, so I know what this is all about. Now I do observe myself with a lot more compassion, and I'm much more good to myself, and I don't really pay a lot of attention to that critical voice inside. Sometimes I still hear it, but I don't pay any attention to it. So it says it's vital to start learning how to not give power to that critical, shaming voice, right? We need to start observing ourselves with compassion. And they said this is almost impossible at the beginning of the inner child healing process. Having compassion for ourselves, being loving to ourselves is the hardest thing for us to do. That's well, for me, that's true. I don't know if that's true for everybody. It may not be true for everybody because none of this stuff is true for everybody. We've all been through different things, and I know a lot of times I'll be looking at something and I'll be like, well, that's not really how it was for me. But because we're all different, we've all been through different things, right? But I know it is important to have compassion for ourselves because we want to have compassion for ourselves, just like I might have compassion for somebody else, which I should. Should be. It's good to be compassionate, right? I'm a good, compassionate. I could be compassionate for someone else. Why can't I be compassionate for myself? Yeah, I got to remember these things, right? We are a lot of times too hard on ourselves because of the abuse, right? Because of that inner critical parent or inner critical abuser, that still doesn't want us to feel anything good about ourselves, really, or doesn't want us to feel like we can succeed or that we can do this, or whatever the issue is, right? Whatever we're going through. It says being loving to ourselves. We need to be loving to ourselves. They say there it's the hardest thing for us to do. For some people, I'm sure that it is. For myself, it was difficult because I really hated myself. I didn't just hate myself. I hated life, and I really hated this whole thing. And I hated the abuse. I hated what happened to me. And I still hate what happened to me? Absolutely. That was incredibly wrong, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't sugarcoat it, It was wrong, and I used to hate my body, and I hated life. And, that turned around for me May 22nd, 2007. That's when I really started my healing journey, the very beginning of it, when I decided that I really didn't deserve all that, and that I was really always searching for love, and that I needed to start loving myself. in order to be able to love and to move forward and love this life and this gift that I've been given. I'm sure there's so many survivors of abuse who've been killed and murdered. Well, they're not survivors, but maybe they survived a little while and then they were killed and murdered. Or either that or victims of child abuse, who've been killed and murdered. And, they're just laying in they're just dead. They're in the ground because their abusers killed them. And I'm sure that they would love to be where I'm at today, to be able to sit here and experience the life as an adult and to know what love is, and to know what looking after myself properly is, and to know what it is to care for people, to have somebody care about you, to care about people. It's not just having somebody care about me, but it's being able to care about somebody. It's that mutual care and concern and compassion and love, between people. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of these children out here who've been murdered and they're long gone over the many, many millions of years, well, thousands of years, let's just say. Many millions that are dead that would have probably loved to be able to get where I'm at right now, to be able to say, well, I've experienced love and I know what real love is, and I know what it is to be good to myself and to not listen to that inner critical voice that tells me I don't deserve to be here, I never should have lived, and that I'm just worthless, right? And so, there's lots of people that would love to probably be able to say that. Does it mean, does it mean it's not hurtful or painful? No. Because all the things that happened to me were very hurtful, very painful, and have affected my life in a profound way. But it does mean that I can still have compassion for myself, and I can still learn to love myself, and I can learn to love life and love other people. So these things are very important. So we'll pick up the rest of this one, start looking at this tomorrow. And a positive reinforcement. What am I doing right in my daily walk? What are we doing right? Looking at the positives instead of just being negative on myself. Well, I caught that cold and I couldn't do anything really. I was just like, I was really sick and I couldn't even work my shift. Really, I had to call in, and so really nothing got done. Absolutely nothing, because I went to bed and I stayed in bed, and I actually got up on Sunday. And I got up for a little while in the afternoon there, and I decided I better just get up for a little while. And not sleep the whole weekend away, but I was very sick, and I thought, okay, I'm not getting anything done, so I'm not going to worry about it. So really, I haven't made any progress on any of the things I wanted to work on, except for I'm trying to get better from this cold, so that's all right. These things happen, like I said last week. It's very frustrating, because sometimes things get pushed to the side, and things just keep getting pushed to the side, and there's really nothing I can do about it, so I'm not going to stress over it. So we'll look at a positive reinforcement, a positive affirmation. Fridays was I'm at peace with myself, and then today is I'm a responsible person. I'm learning to be a responsible person. I'm trying to be a responsible person. I don't think there's anybody that could say they're 100% responsible on every single thing that they do, because that's just not true. Because there's a lot of people that might think they are, and they just think they're perfect or whatever. But that's just not true, because everybody lets things slip and slide once in a while, and things happen. I think the goal is to try to be as responsible every day as we possibly can. I'm a responsible person. I try to be responsible to myself and to others. For what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do. What I say I'm going to do for myself, I'm going to do. So it's not just for me, but for others, And I'm a responsible person, as far as life goes. I try to be responsible. And when I was younger, that was not the case. I was a very irresponsible person, but it's because people say, oh, well, it's just your personality. It's like, well, yeah, because I was beaten from birth. I had my head caved in as a child several times, and including skull fractures. I mean, I was just beaten horrifically as a child. And then just basically made it feel like I was garbage and then sexually abused. So, I wasn't really the most responsible person as a teenager, because I had so much anger, so much rage. I could never express my feelings about the abuse to the people that I needed to, who were supposed to care for me and actually care about me and care whether I lived or died. It's really unfortunate, but I became an irresponsible teenager, and then that just worked itself into an irresponsible young adult. But then when I hit, a certain age, I'd say probably 23, 24, even before that, maybe 22, I really wanted to be a responsible adult. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have any good role models. And so, because both my parents were my abusers, and I grew up with this real really dysfunctional family, I had to look around for other role models, Little House on the Prairie really helped me out a lot, because I actually learned a lot from that show. But and some neighbors, some people that I thought were pretty decent. But I had to learn how to be responsible. It's not something that's come easy for me, and I have a tendency to want to run, in any situation, and I'm getting better now because I'm able to face things down with confidence nowadays. But back in the old days, it was like either get really vicious and get violent or run, one or the other, fight or flight. Right? I had that total fight or flight thing going on, and so I try to be responsible. I want people to be responsible when they're dealing with me, so I really try to be responsible with them, right? And I try to be responsible for myself, to help myself out. And I think that's the biggest thing, like I want to do this for myself, I want to be the responsible adult in the situation. It's unfortunate I didn't have any responsible people looking after me when I was young to show me how to do these things. It's taken me a long time to get where I am today, but it's at least I'm working on it. So I'm not 100% responsible, but I've never met anybody that is. I met a lot of people that think they are. They like to rub it in your face that they think that they're so responsible, but they're really not. Everybody's not 100% responsible. But I think it's to work towards that. That's kind of like the goal, and I think that's honesty, because when you're a responsible person, you're going to be honest with yourself, and you're going to be honest with others. And but that's not just being, that's being real, not being a false sort of sense of yourself or whatever. It's the true identity. We have to look within to know who we really are, because I think that's really the only way we can get to that responsible place where we're responsible people, right? Which means we're honest and real, right? So that's important, and it's a big job, but it can be doable. It can be done. I just don't think that most people are there, because people are really quite often hiding behind stuff, which is actually really quite irresponsible. And so we have to be. I want to be responsible and honest and everything else. So I think other people should be too, but nobody's 100% of that. I don't think there is anybody on the planet that actually can be 100% of that, because nobody knows themselves that well, and they won't look in that closely, because it's hurtful to have to deal with these things, the things that we have to face about ourselves, maybe that we need to work on. So, a lot of times we don't see them. I had to have a life coach actually point a lot of mine out, and then I've had the two therapist ladies that have pointed a lot of stuff out for me too, which really helped me out. But most people won't look that far because they don't think that they need help. So they think they're good and they're perfect and everything's good about them. It's the rest of the world that's messed up. What they don't realize is they do have problems, and that if they just took a little look at themselves, they would see that. But it's true. That's irresponsibility. We have to be responsible. And it's just like my healing journey. I have to be responsible. So if I want to walk around all day saying I'm responsible, it's okay. We could say that, but if we have to look and make sure that we're actually being truthful about it and not being false about it, and kind of not being realistic about it, So yeah, I'm working towards being responsible. I'm not completely responsible, but I am working towards it. So to acknowledge, this is Havoka. In the sphere of personal communication, you have the right to acknowledge your feelings without having to justify them as assertions of fact or actions affecting others. So I like that. Some of these are really, you should read them twice just to get it right. The sphere of personal communication, you have the right to as a survivor of abuse. We have the right to acknowledge our feelings without having to justify them as assertions of fact or actions affecting others. So I have a right to acknowledge my feelings without having to justify them before anybody, and that's true. We don't have to justify our feelings about things. A lot of times people will just make you feel like you have to justify everything you're feeling and doing, and you really don't. You can give somebody whatever answer you feel is necessary, and if it's good enough, well, then we have to live with the consequences of all of our actions, right? But we have the right to acknowledge our feelings. It says, so you have the right to acknowledge your feelings without having to justify them as assertions of fact or actions affecting others. I really like that. It's important to know that we have rights, because survivors of abuse quite often are told that they don't have rights, and made to feel that they don't have rights, and that's what abuse is control, right? So anytime somebody's trying to control you, it is actually a form of abuse, right? And so many times people will make you feel like you just don't have these rights because this way they can control us, right? And that's a form of it's actually how people abuse, is through control. So, because they're trying to control the situation, whether, and then that's just how they choose to deal with it, right? So, we do have rights, and we need to know what they are. Personal Bill of Rights, I think these are so important. This one is from Charles H. Whitfield and Healing the Child Within. Charles H. Whitfield, MD. And Friday we looked at number 19. I have the right to experience and then let go of fear, guilt, and shame. Number 20 today is I have a right to make decisions based on my feelings, my judgment, or any reason that I choose. That's very true. We have a right to make decisions based on my feelings. I have a right to make a decision based on my feelings about something. I have a right to make a decision based on my judgment. And I have a right to make a decision based on for any reason that I choose. And it's true, we do. And with these things come again, consequences. But we have a right to make these decisions, and we can't, and nobody has the right to tell us that we don't have a right to our own feelings and a right to our own judgment calls and because this is our life. This is my life. It's nobody else's life. It doesn't belong to anybody else. The life that I'm living today doesn't belong to anyone but me. And I mean my higher power, because I'm a Christian, but I don't drag my Christianity into this show. But I mean I have a higher power, and I believe that my life actually belongs to him. But he's given it to me to be responsible for. And so it's what I'm doing. I'm trying to work on that. Right. So, but I mean my life doesn't belong, it's nobody else's but mine. So nobody has the right to tell me how to feel, to try to tell me how to judge properly, to tell me anything like that. This is my life, right? So that's very important to understand that, this is my body. Because being abused, growing up abused, it's such a bad situation for so many people. I didn't even have the right to my own body. And I didn't have a right to, within my own home, within the people that should have cared for me and loved me. I didn't have a right to my own body, and I didn't have a right to my own feelings about the abuse. So I was abused, and then I was not allowed to voice my woundedness. I just had to take it. So that including the child sexual abuse. So I didn't have a right to my own body, and I didn't even have a right to my own feelings. So that's why it's very, very important to know that we have these rights, right? And to make sure that we actually understand that we have these rights and go through them and look at them. So get this information. This is all very important. And you can get that Charles H. Whitfield, MD, that one you can find just about anywhere, Healing the Child Within. And Charles H. Whitfield, if you type that in your browser, that will come up and you can find it. It's everywhere. And it's free. You can just grab it and look at it. There's 38 of them there. And Havoca has all their stuff on their website. That's havoca.org, HABOCA.org. So we just got a couple minutes here. I think what we'll do is we'll wind down. We'll look at this couple of these other things tomorrow morning. Then I want to finish off here. But I want to look at Brainy Quote. And Brainy Quote has a quote that says, this is a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. It says, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. So I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. That's Martin Luther King Jr. And that is just so awesome. I saw that this morning, and that's from BrainyQuote.com. And they said you can use their stuff. You just have to give credit where credit is due, and you have to tell people where you got the quote. So I got that from Brainy Quote. Brainy Quote has some awesome quotes on there with really beautiful pictures and everything. But this one, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. That's very true. And for this morning, if you're having trouble, if you're having difficulties, you don't know how you're going to cope, and maybe today you feel good, but then tonight, if you just can't cope, or maybe next week, you remember what I'm telling you right now, and you keep this in the back of your mind, and keep it there all the time. You reach out and get some help, and you do not allow yourself to go down. You get some help. You call a crisis line. You call somebody. You get some help, and you do not allow yourself to be destroyed by your past or by your abuse. That's what almost happened to me. It's what happened to two of my brothers. They killed themselves, and don't allow that to happen to yourself, because you do deserve to be here. You do deserve to have a good life. You did not deserve to be abused, and I don't mind saying it, because it's the truth. right? We deserve to have a good life, and we do deserve to get help, at the help that we need. But we have to be our number one best advocate and get busy reaching out for that help, right? And so make sure that you get some help and you stick it out. If you can't figure out how to get help and how to even go forward, you call a crisis line. You call someone, right? So I wish you a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.